In the heart of Ohio, where the soil has seen its share of battles, and where the air still carries the whispers of history, lies the Chase Confederate Cemetery. A solemn place, tucked away on the outskirts of Columbus, it serves as a final resting place for many soldiers who died in the Civil War, imprisoned at the infamous Camp Chase. But beneath its quiet, almost peaceful exterior, there is a presence, an unsettling, inexplicable force that lingers among the tombstones. The locals speak of it in hushed tones, as though afraid that even uttering its name aloud might summon something from the grave. The cemetery itself is nothing more than a peaceful plot of land, with rows of weathered headstones stretching out across a green expanse. The grounds are shaded by tall trees, their leaves rustling in the wind, but there is an undeniable heaviness in the air. Something about the place feels wrong, as though the dead are not content to rest in peace. And in the midst of this eerie tranquility, the figure of the woman in gray has become a well-known legend. No one knows her name, but she has been haunting the cemetery for decades. The first recorded sighting dates back to the late 1800s, shortly after the last of Confederate prisoners were buried. Witnesses claim to have seen a woman dressed in a gray traveling suit, her long skirt brushing the ground as she walks slowly among the graves. She is always seen with her head bowed, as if deep in mourning. The woman's face is often obscured by a veil of grief, and those who have seen her speak of an overwhelming sense of sorrow that seems to emanate from her, as if she were mourning the loss of something or someone long gone. Some say she is the ghost of a widow, searching for the body of her fallen husband. Others believe she is the spirit of a mother whose son died in the war, her heart forever broken by the loss. But the truth remains a mystery. What is certain, however, is that the woman in gray has become an indelible part of the cemetery's haunted history. In 1988, something happened at the cemetery that would forever change the way people viewed the woman in gray. During a Civil War reenactment held on the grounds, a group of spectators gathered to watch the soldiers march and engage in battle. As actors recreated the violent clashes of the past, the air was thick with the sound of marching boots, the crack of gunfire, and the distant shouts of commands. But amidst this dramatic display, something far more chilling occurred: the sound of a woman crying. The weeping was faint at first, but as the minutes passed, it grew louder. It was not a scream, but a soft, mournful cry, like that of a woman in the deepest throes of despair. The people around the reenactment paused, their attention drawn away from the stage battle, as the sound filled the air. At first, they believed it to be part of the act, a woman's voice staged for effect. But as the crying continued, and as the minutes dragged on without a single visible person in sight, a sense of unease settled over the crowd. They searched the area, calling out to anyone who might be in distress. But there was no sign of a woman. The crying persisted for several more minutes, growing fainter and fainter, until it finally ceased altogether. The crowd, confused and unsettled, continued their search, but the source of the cry remained elusive. The reenactment continued as planned, but the unsettling sensation remained in the air. And as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cemetery, the mournful cry was never explained. Those who witnessed the incident were left with the unmistakable feeling that they had heard something otherworldly, something beyond the realm of the living. Some believed that the woman in gray had made her presence known once again, a voice from the past crying out from a grave. It wasn't long after the crying incident that another phenomenon began to take place at Camp Chase Confederate Cemetery, a strange and inexplicable event that would further cement the reputation of the woman in gray as a restless spirit. One by one, visitors to the cemetery began to report a curious sight. The graves, many of which had long since been forgotten, were adorned with fresh flowers that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The flowers were always placed delicately beside specific tombstones, as though the woman in gray had placed them there herself. What made this event even more mysterious was the timing. The flowers would appear just after the woman in gray was seen walking among the graves, and they would vanish just as mysteriously as she did. No one could explain where the flowers came from or how they appeared, but the connection between the ghostly woman and the fresh blooms was undeniable. One particularly chilling account comes from a couple who visited the cemetery one spring evening. As they wandered through the rows of graves, they spotted a bouquet of white roses placed gently on a Confederate soldier's tombstone. The flowers were fresh, as if they had just been laid there moments before. The couple, intrigued and somewhat unnerved, took a closer look at the grave. There was no one around, and the tombstone itself bore no sign of recent visitors. As they turned to leave, they noticed something even more unnerving. The faint sound of footsteps, soft and deliberate, trailing behind them. They whipped around, but there was no one there. The flowers, however, remained, an offering left by the woman in gray, a sign that she had been there, mourning the fallen once again. As more account of the woman in gray surfaced, a pattern began to emerge. Those who had seen her or heard her cries spoke of an overwhelming sense of grief, a sorrow so deep that it seemed to seep into their very bones. There was no anger or malevolence in the woman's presence, only an aching sadness, as if she were forever trapped in a moment of mourning, unable to move on. What could have caused such deep sorrow in a soul that had been bound to the cemetery for so long? Was she mourning the soldiers who died in the war? Or was there something more personal that tethered her to this place? The answers remained elusive, but the feeling of loss was undeniable. The woman in gray was not just a figure of the past. She was a reflection of the pain that lingered long after the war ended. Some believed that she was searching for her own lost loved one, a husband or son who had fallen in battle. Others speculated that her grief was more complex, perhaps the result of a tragic love story lost to time. Whatever the cause of her sorrow, it was clear that she had become a part of the cemetery itself, her spirit intertwined with the land, forever bound to the souls of the soldiers she mourned. In the years since the 1988 reenactment, Camp Chase Confederate Cemetery has continued to attract visitors, history buffs, ghost hunters, and the curious alike. Many of them come to see the woman in gray for themselves, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive figure who has become a part of the cemetery's haunted legacy. But the woman in gray is not an easy spirit to encounter. Those who have seen her often describe her as fleeting, a presence that is felt more than seen, as if she is always just out of reach. Some say that she appears on foggy mornings, when the mist rolls in from the surrounding fields, shrouding the cemetery in a veil of mystery. Others claim to have seen her during the quiet hours of the evening, when the sun dips below the horizon and the cemetery takes on an eerie stillness. But no matter when she appears, one thing is certain: the woman in gray is not a figure to be taken lightly. She is a spirit trapped in a never-ending cycle of grief, bound to the land by the souls of the soldiers she mourns. And for those who encounter her, the experience is both haunting and unforgettable. As time marches on, the legend of the woman in gray remains a constant presence at Camp Chase Confederate Cemetery. The cemetery, once a quiet final resting place for Confederate soldiers, has become a site of pilgrimage for those who seek to understand the mysteries of the past and to witness the haunting of the woman in gray for themselves. But for those who have encountered her, the experience is more than just a ghost story. It is a reminder of the deep sorrow that lingers in the wake of war and of the souls that cannot find peace. The woman in gray is not just a spirit of the past. She is a reflection of the enduring grief that echoes through history, a grief that can never truly be laid to rest. As long as the cemetery stands, the woman in gray will continue to walk among the graves, her head bowed in eternal mourning. And for those who are brave enough to visit, the ghostly presence of the woman in gray will remain, a chilling reminder of the past that refuses to fade away.